Have you ever heard how Velcro was invented? Well, a Swiss engineer was taking his dog for a walk and came back covered in burrs. Now, most people would have been annoyed by this, but no, he looked a bit closer. And by looking closer, he made a problem into a solution. And that stuck with me because a few years ago, I got a message from a panicked window cleaner locally saying that his business had been suspended. And so his Google business profile had no leads, no calls, and he wasn't being found on Google Maps. And I didn't know it then, but that was my Velcro moment. And yet one disaster became 5. But by fixing each one of those, it became something even bigger. And not just for him, but for dozens of business owners. So if you're drowning in this stuff, don't worry. I've put a lifeline down in the comments below. More on that a bit later. So it's about solving the 5 lessons that most people are going to come across and learn the hard way. So if you've ever felt lost after losing ranking, getting suspended, or even just getting a Google slap, well, this one's going to bounce you back to the top. So taking my first disaster, we'll call disaster number 1, this was all about how that suspension changed everything. So I was working on his profile and suddenly then he phones me up with this, saying there's a suspension. No warning, no help, no clue from Google, you know the feeling. So I thought, well, how hard can this be? Well, turns out it was really hard. Google's a nightmare with communication and they give you no clues. Now, hopefully that's beginning to change. We spent days chasing up support, sending emails to support, re-verifying it, giving proofs and documents, and it just felt like we're getting nowhere with Google support. But actually, it was only to discover that many years back, he had already registered his business. And in fact, he'd registered it twice. And so in effect, we had a duplicated business that we weren't even aware of. And of course, I made a video all about this a few years ago. But that moment taught me 2 things. Number 1, Google support doesn't support. And number 2, most businesses don't realize why they got suspended in the first place. So from that, I invented my Velcro. I invented a suspension toolkit, and many have benefited from that since and managed to recover their business. So that was my first learning curve. But my next disaster was down to really understanding how reviews work. I discovered actually that 4.3 as an average for your reviews, it can actually be better than 5.0. Let me explain. I was recently contacted by a business owner called Peter in Aberdeen, and from what he said, I realised that my advice on reviews is pretty powerful. You see, he was stuck with barely any reviews, and it's not for a lack of asking. People just don't give reviews even when you ask. He said to me, I kept asking for customers to give reviews and no one seemed to do much. In fact, I got 1 review over the past several months. And it took me back to the time when quite a few years ago, I had a review that was given to me. It was before I was optimizing my Google business profile. And he said he's going to give me a bad review. And basically I was doing web design as a misunderstanding. I put things right. In the end, he did give me a review. It was actually a 5-star. So things worked out well. But it made me think that what happens if you get a bad review? What you can do is you can put in so many good reviews that even a bad review will still bring the average down to 4.8, 4.9. And that's not a bad thing. So meanwhile, I started to design a way to get more reviews from my clients. I came up with a few strategies that I put into a workshop. So from the disaster, it led then to this workshop where you can get a strategy to get more reviews. And by using certain templates and phrases, I managed to get 20 reviews quite quickly. As I go back to Peter, he'd followed some of the advice I'd given. He used the QR code, he used some of the references I made, and said then that within a week or so, he got 15 more reviews. So it really does work. These are genuine reviews, not fake ones that people are buying out there. And that's when I discovered that actually 4.3 is better than 5.0. And that was explained in my workshop at the time. And I think that's still true today. And it's to do with trust, authenticity, and Google knows there's a lot of fake reviews out there. But it's worth noting that Google isn't just looking at the average views or the amount of reviews, it's also looking at how regular are those reviews. And it also looks at a few other things as well, not just recency, but also the diversity and the volume of reviews. And so from solving a pain, the workshop was born. That brings me on to disaster number 3, which is really, I call it learning to drive. And this isn't about driving fast. It's not about becoming a racing driver driving around Monaco. But this is where things really clicked in place for me. Because I realised most business owners don't need someone to do it all for them, because the results tend to just disappear overnight, because the person optimizing it for them has no real genuine interest in customers. I realised what you need is someone to teach you to drive. Like a driving instructor sits next to you and shows you how to drive safely. That's when I realised that that is where the real value is. So could someone sit with a business owner and teach them the signs, teach them how to drive safely, teach them how to use the clutch, the gears, teach them how to respect other drivers, but know when the right time is to make certain moves? And so instead of doing everything for someone, which is what I used to do, I thought I could teach them how to do it with just a few simple guides and some templates for them to fill in, and show them what to fix, what to measure, what to improve on, and then what to repeat. Because the truth is, the best person to help customers with your business is you, the business owner, the one who really cares. And that brings me on to disaster number 4, which is when I realized that people, they don't want to do it alone though. They do want someone to go back to. They need some support. Google support isn't really there. So how could they get that? Because I can give them toolkits, I can give them downloads, but ultimately that doesn't help, because they still have questions. Do I use this image? What keywords do I use? Should I use the keyword here or there? Should I answer these types of questions? What type of posts and offers should I offer? It goes on, these types of questions. So then I decided to open up a support space and build up a community where I can then answer individuals' questions. A place where screenshots can be shared, problems can be shared amongst different business owners. And so a community was born. And sometimes just knowing there's someone there that you can talk to that knows answers can make all the difference. And now moving on to disaster number 5 is the way that AI is beginning to change things. And business owners are really getting concerned about, will what I do now make an impact on the AI results and AI mode that's about to be released? And it's true, AI has changed the game to some degree. The business layouts for profiles is beginning to change. The colors are changing on Google business profiles. And even the way that people are interacting, they're not using just a couple of keywords, they're using real questions now. And Google's AI and AI mode and ChatGPT are all going to different areas to get answers. They're often keeping customers on their own platform rather than sending them to the website. So how's this going to pan out? Is this a disaster that's waiting to happen? And it's fair to say some of the old SEO tricks of the past are no longer working. So I've been adapting things. I've been adapting my guides, my workshops, my downloads, and just the way I help business owners. But the problem was I had so many things going on, in effect, I became overwhelmed by having too much in different places. So what all good workmen do is, if their tools are scattered, every so often you sort them out and you put them all back into your toolbox, all nicely organized, so that you can now be more efficient in your work. So I've done just that. I've put everything under one platform, one access point, everything I use to fix Google business profiles, all there in one place. So just like that Swiss engineer with his dog, sometimes the burrs are the breakthrough. So if you ever felt like you're drowning in this stuff, if you ever feel that Google isn't listening to you, if you really feel like sometimes you just don't know where to go, what to do, or you need some type of support, so I've dropped a lifeline down below. The link's there. Give it a go. It's not a magic fix, but it's helped business owners. It's helped my friends. It's helped those I worked with over the years to know where to go at the right times and make great decisions. But either way, thanks for being part of this journey of learning how we can improve from one disaster and make something even better. But if that link isn't for you just yet, that's fine, because here's a masterclass. It's absolutely free. Follow this, apply this to your business, and I guarantee you're going to see some great changes if you do just that. I'll see you next on this video, or click the link below.